Welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight we recap President Biden's latest interview on ABC.
Meanwhile, Israel and Hamas lay out demands for a ceasefire.
And the UK's Labour Party makes major gains in a recent election. All right, happy Monday, everyone. We hope you had a wonderful 4th of July holiday. And as we've had some time off, we have plenty of news to catch you up on, beginning with President Biden, who is still resisting calls to end his re-election campaign following his devastating debate against former President Donald Trump, which greatly raised concerns about his cognitive ability. During a Friday interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, Biden said Democrats really have nothing to be worried about, saying it was nothing more than a bad night.
Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
Biden blamed his poor performance on a cold. That's something we've heard from the White House before. Since the debate, a number of Democrats have called on Biden to resign, fearing he can no longer beat Donald Trump. Both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times now show Trump leading Biden by 6 points. But despite this, Biden said he has no plans to step aside.
And if Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi come down and say, we're worried that if you stay in the race, we're going to lose the House and the Senate, how will you respond?
I go into detail with them. I've spoken to all of them in detail, including Jim Clyburn. Every one of them. They all said I should stay in the race. Stay in the race. None of the people said I should leave.
But if they do?
Well, it's like, they're not going to do that.
You sure?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down.
As far as polling goes, Biden called the race a toss-up at this point, saying, quote, I don't think anybody's more qualified to be president or win this race than me.
At the same time, Democrats are trying to figure out how to nominate someone else to run for president. According to Axios, a Democratic operative said on Saturday that every single person not named Biden or paid by the president recognizes how deep a hole he is in. The Washington Post estimates that only 1 out of 10 Biden supporters think he should stay. In the face of this uncertainty, 2 Democrats are organizing a blitz primary to nominate a new leader. Professor Rosa Brooks at Georgetown University and venture capitalist Ted Dintersmith proposed that President Biden should gracefully bow out of the race by mid-July. Vice President Kamala Harris would support his decision and call for a blitz primary where candidates such as Harris herself would make their bid as possible presidential nominees. Brooks told the Washington Examiner that while all this is contingent on Biden's ultimate decision, she added that Democrats could still put up a good fight in November, even if the president stays in the race.
It would also seem contingent on Harris as well, because I would think if Biden bows out, she would just want to take the main spot. So we have to see.
Of course, yeah, which would, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it seems doubtful for the plan. Meanwhile, Republicans are looking for answers from Biden's doctor on the state of the president's health. House Oversight Chair James Comer has requested an interview with White House physician Kevin O'Connor, who, following a physical back in February, described Biden as fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency. It should be noted that O'Connor's report did not include a mention of a cognitive test, which Biden to this day refuses to take.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world.
This comes as the New York Post now reports that White House visitor logs, they show a Parkinson's disease expert met with the president's doctor sometime earlier this year following Biden's annual physical. Dr. O'Connor, he said that testing had shown no findings which would be consistent with Parkinson's disease, but some Republicans, such as Senator Roger Marshall, who is himself a doctor, says the American people deserve to know more.
If a president had a heart attack a month ago, don't you think that before the coming election, Americans would want to know what's his cardiac output, what's his EKG look like now, what's his latest hardcast show? So yes, Americans deserve to know the cognitive ability of what the president is at this point in time as well as going forward.
Marshall said, according to his sources, a Parkinson's specialist has visited the White House 10 times in this past year.
Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump is getting a break from his Florida classified documents case following the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity. Trump's lawyers filed a motion on Friday to pause some deadlines in the case to consider the impact of the ruling. They argued it would be consistent with DOJ policies and practices that the special counsel's office claims to be found by, but is largely ignoring. Judge Eileen Cannon approved the motion the following day. Attorneys have until the end of this month to turn in briefings on the topic, and a hearing is expected in August.
And only weeks out from the Republican National Convention, tensions are heating up over the party's platform on abortion. Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, Donald Trump has been adamant about leaving the issue up to the states for the time being, a point he made during his recent debate with Joe Biden.
Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people.
The Republican Party has long supported a national abortion ban. As recent as 2016, the party platform called for a constitutional amendment to protect the unborn, but that could all change in the coming days as Republicans meet to draft this year's platform.
Well, I think our platform has to reflect our nominee, and our nominee's position actually happens to be one grounded in reality. The reality of it is the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and what that basically means is that now it's not states, it's voters at individual states who will get to decide how and to what level they want to restrict abortion, if at all. Some states will have restrictions, some states will not.
That was Florida Senator and potential Trump VP pick Marco Rubio. His comments have caused quite a shock among some pro-lifers. For example, Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, and who is, by the way, also a member of the RNC Platform Committee, he said he was stunned by what he called Rubio's capitulation to the forces of abortion. Perkins now says the RNC needs to keep a strong pro-life stance.
Look, Republicans do not need to water down the platform with passive pastels, which some are suggesting. This, my friend, this is a time to be bold. Unmistakable colors that communicate a difference and a vision. Keep it strong, bold, unmistakable colors that paint a vision for the future.
All right, and up next we have updates on the war in Gaza, where ceasefire talks continue as pressures continue to mount over Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The details on all that and so much more after this short break. We'll be right back after this.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
When a woman experiences an unplanned pregnancy, she's faced with a difficult decision. Preborn connects with life-affirming pregnancy clinics across the nation and provides them with free ultrasound sessions for expectant mothers. When a mother sees her baby on an ultrasound and hears their heartbeat, it doubles the chance she'll choose life. Visit preborn.com/life to save a baby's life.
Fear and uncertainty can cause us to hold things tightly and rely on ourselves. But during uncertain times, as believers in Christ, we are called to surrender fully to our sovereign God. Learn a biblically responsible investment strategy proven over 25 years. Keep the money God has entrusted to you out of companies that participate in things that God detests. Fully surrender. Become a Financial Issues Partners today.
Hey there, welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We turn our attention now away from politics to the war in Gaza, where Hamas is now denying reports suggesting it had somewhat softened its demands during recent ceasefire talks. A senior Hamas official tells CBS News the terrorist group is still demanding Israel give an upfront commitment for a complete end to the war as part of a deal, despite reports to the contrary. This comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has released demands of his own, including the ability to resume fighting following any ceasefire deal. That's something that puts him at odds with Hamas, and he also wants to maximize the number of living hostages released from captivity.
Meanwhile, we go now to FISM's Ian Patrick for some other updates coming out of the war in Gaza.
Well, let's look at some other updates in Israel and Gaza, starting with some news coming from the IDF. On Saturday, Israel's army announced that it had killed a key operative in Hezbollah's aerial defense unit. In a statement, the IDF said it had eliminated Maitham Mustafa Altar in eastern Lebanon. The army also accused Altar of being responsible for numerous attacks against Israelis and for building up Hezbollah's fighting force. Lebanese state media later said that Altar's car was attacked by a drone strike while he was in the town of Sha'ath. Hezbollah confirmed his death as well, but did not further elaborate or comment on his role in the group. Meanwhile, on Sunday, Hezbollah also confirmed that it launched a drone attack on Mount Hermon in the Golan Heights area. They specifically targeted a part of the Golan Heights where Israel has a key surveillance center. And for the moment, there have been no reports of any casualties or fatalities from that strike. However, we did recently receive an updated casualty amount for the Israeli military. According to official military data, the IDF has lost 679 soldiers total on all fronts of the war since the October 7th terror attack. Data further shows that 323 soldiers have died since the IDF began its Gaza ground assault on October 27th. The most recent fatality was recorded on this past Thursday when Staff Sergeant Ayal Mimran was killed in action during battles in Gaza City. And speaking of the IDF's campaign in Gaza, the military has indicated that it has destroyed much of Hamas's military capabilities in that area. Within the embattled city of Rafah, military spokesperson Daniel Hagari says that the IDF is actually close to defeating the Rafah Brigade. And he later says that this is, quote, a metaphor for all Hamas military frameworks around Gaza. The IDF says it will continue working in Gaza to eliminate all of Hamas's military capabilities, one of its key goals in the war. Now, despite what appears to be some progress on that front, Israelis are still quite dissatisfied with their government when it comes to this war. Protests against the Israeli government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cropped up once again in recent days. For example, protesters gathered in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, and other cities on Sunday, specifically protesting the war. Some took issue with the way the military is conducting its operations in Gaza, saying that the Israeli government is perpetrating destruction in the area. Others cried out for a greater focus on returning the 116 remaining hostages held by Hamas, who are supposedly still in Gaza. Israel does maintain that returning all hostages is one of its three main goals of its campaign against Hamas in total. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks so much for that report, Ian. Meanwhile, the possibility of Trump's second term is expected to be a major topic of conversation at NATO's 75th anniversary celebration later this week. With Trump now pulling away in the polls, at least for the time being, NATO is looking to future-proof the coalition, including support for Ukraine. As I'm sure you know, Trump has repeatedly complained about the amount of funding the U.S. gives NATO compared to other countries. And as a result, NATO is reportedly looking into new defense plans that don't heavily rely on the U.S.
Meanwhile, England elected its new prime minister. The Labour Party scored a landslide victory in Parliament, making centre-left Keir Starmer the new prime minister. He replaced Conservative Party leader Rishi Sunak. Labour's victory comes after 14 years of Conservative rule in Parliament.
We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and it is surely clear to everyone that our country needs a bigger reset. A rediscovery of who we are, because no matter how fierce the storms of history, one of the great strengths of this nation has always been our ability to navigate a way to calmer waters.
Now, despite 80% of British voters not voting for Starmer, the Prime Minister reassured the citizens that he would be of service to all.
People who didn't vote for us need to know that we will serve them, that we will not turn our back on people just because we don't think they voted for us. We'll govern for the whole country. And that's what I meant by what I said yesterday. It's about taking the country forward and doing that, in conjunction with our First Ministers, doing that in conjunction with our mayors and other elected representatives across the areas, so that we can govern for the whole of the country and take the country forward.
Starmer added that he's committed to putting country first and party second. Currently, the Labour Party holds 412 seats in Parliament, while the Conservative Party has sunk to an all-time low of 121 seats. According to CNBC, Conservative lost votes to the right-wing populist party called the Reform UK Party.
Elsewhere, there was also a big election in Iran, as yesterday reformist candidate Mossad Pezeshkian won the race to become Iran's next president following the death of Ebrahim Raisi. He's seen as a sort of more of a moderate candidate, as he's been noted for reaching out to Iran's ethnic minorities and also promising to ease enforcement of headscarf laws as well. However, he is still in support of most of the country's current policies and maintains his support of Iran's dictator Ayatollah Khamenei.
And over the weekend, elections in France left no clear majority to lead the nation, following a surprising rally from left-wing and liberal coalitions. After an upset victory for French conservatives in the first round of elections, results over the weekend showed a rally for both liberal and left-wing parties in France, with the far-left National Popular Front leading ahead of all other parties. President Emmanuel Macron's Liberal coalition finished second, while French conservatives led by Marine Le Pen finished third. Experts have speculated that Macron may want to form a joint government with the left wing, although such an alliance is unlikely. Now, if no party succeeds in negotiating a government, it would be the first time in modern French history that no single party has had a majority. All sides are now encouraged to move quickly, as the prime minister is scheduled to resign today. And up next, Hurricane Beryl makes landfall in Texas, leaving nearly 1 million people without power. We'll get to that and more after a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, let's travel across the world and back over 75 years, actually, to the dramatic final stages of the most destructive conflict in human history, World War II. In February and March of 1945, over 70,000 United States Marines stormed the island of Iwo Jima and captured it from the Japanese Empire. Nearly 750 miles south of Japan, the island is tiny, only 5 miles in length and 2.5 at its widest point. Despite its size, the island was vital for its strategic location. Now, since the middle of 1944, the Allied powers had made great advances into the European theater, and by February of 45, the Allies had all but freed Europe from the stranglehold of Nazi Germany. Now all eyes were turning to the Pacific, where the United States was largely on its own against Imperial Japan. On February 19th, the first wave of Marines descended off warships in the island of Iwo Jima in an attack very similar to the famous D-Day invasion from 1 year ago. Over the next several weeks, the Marine regiment slowly gained ground amid heavy casualties from the constant barrage of Japanese fire and the occasional banzai suicide charge from the Imperial forces. Roughly 7,000 Marines lost their lives in the battle and many more were wounded. On February 23rd, the Marines captured the strategic Mount Suribachi high ground located on the southwest corner of the island. And that day, 6 Marines raised 2 American flags atop the mountain. In victory, the second flag raising was captured on camera by Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal, and it became an enduring image of courage, liberty, and patriotism for the U.S. and for the free world. Well, the Battle of Iwo Jima lasted more than a month until the Americans stopped a final Japanese suicide charge on March 25th. Iwo Jima was now in American hands. The Axis powers of Europe would surrender in May of '45, and Japan followed suit in August, thus ending World War II. The Allies were victorious in large part to these courageous Marines who captured that little island of Iwo Jima. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Do you want to invest in biblically responsible stocks? Financial Issues can help. For only $132 per year, our team of experts will help you make wise decisions with your money and guide you to successful investments that will not dishonor God. You'll also have access to our Portfolio Tracker tool, which will help you keep an eye on your asset allocations, and our Buys and Sells page, which will give you valuable information about biblically responsible stocks. Being a Financial Issues partner is the best way to invest in accordance with biblical values. Make the most of your money by becoming a partner today. Sign up at financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
Hi, I'm Aisha. At first, I was debating whether or not I was really pregnant and took a test. While I was waiting, they talked to me about different pregnancy choices and different options and information that helped me be more educated. To confirm, I got an ultrasound of the pregnancy test, and it was for sure positive, and I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, let's start with Hurricane Beryl, which made landfall in Texas as a still deadly Category 1 hurricane earlier today. It's the first storm of the 2024 Atlantic season to make landfall in the U.S., where it knocked out power for nearly 1 million people. Beryl has since been downgraded to a tropical storm as it continues tracking inland across eastern Texas. The National Hurricane Center warns that life-threatening storm surge continues to pummel the coastal regions of the Lone Star State. The storm killed at least 11 people last week across the Caribbean and Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Over 120 Texas counties were placed under a disaster declaration, and thousands of people evacuated ahead of the storm's arrival.
And still 36 million people are under excessive heat warnings as oppressively high temperatures continue in the western U.S. Tragically, one motorcyclist died over the weekend while traveling through Death Valley National Park. There, temperatures were a scorching 128 degrees. That's just 6 degrees below the world record. Arizona has also seen over a dozen confirmed heat deaths, related deaths this year, with more than 100 possible others still under investigation. Much of the region will continue under sweltering triple-digit temperatures throughout the rest of this week. At the same time, the heat wave is also fanning multiple wildfires in California. The largest reached 7,000 acres over the weekend. It's located northwest of Los Angeles and was only 8% contained as of this morning.
Meanwhile, in culture, Oklahoma is battling the Biden administration over the state's illegal immigration bill. Back in April, an Oklahoma House bill has made it a crime to be in the state without legal status. But a federal judge has recently blocked the bill after the Biden administration sued the state. The Department of Justice argued that the state's law was unconstitutional because only the federal government can impose borders and oversee immigration. Likewise, U.S. District Judge Bernard M. Jones echoed the statement, saying the law gave too much power to the state, which conflicts with federal law. Oklahoma Republican Attorney General Gentner Drummond said he will appeal the court's decision. He argued that the Biden administration's complete failure to enforce federal immigration laws made House Bill 41556 a necessity.
At the same time, we now have a second whistleblower at Texas Children's Hospital fearing possible federal retaliation for speaking out about secret child transgender procedures. After a whistleblower accused the hospital of violating state laws, 2 FBI agents knocked on the door of Christian nurse Vanessa Sivage back in 2023 with some rather terrifying words.
They said they were there because they knew what I believed. They knew about my views against transgender medicine, and that's why they were there. And they also came and they said that I was a person of interest in an investigation for an individual who had released confidential patient information to the public.
Now, it's now known that those agents were looking for Dr. Ethan Heim. He's a person we've covered multiple times on this show. He was recently charged with alleged HIPAA violations and now faces 10 years in prison for exposing the hospital's secret transgender treatments. Sivage said the FBI visit became a sort of catalyst for going public, and she has since alleged the hospital illegally billed transgender services to Medicaid. As a result, the hospital has warned her that she is also now under investigation.
Very concerning indeed, but fortunately we do have some good news. Hundreds come to Christ on Australia's Gold Coast. On Saturday, William Graham, the grandson of the late Billy Graham, hosted the Look Up celebration in Queensland, a place known as the Australian version of Miami or Las Vegas. But against a backdrop of high-end luxury and entertainment, Graham's family-friendly event shared the gospel with more than 4,600 attendees, hundreds of whom have come to Christ. Here's a snippet.
So how does a sinful person like you and me get into heaven? Tonight, my friends, Jesus wants to come into your life and forgive you of your sin. All you have to be willing to do is to receive it as a gift. I'm going to ask you to get out of your seat and just come and stand right down here.
My heart's beating really fast. I feel really great. I feel like I just went, and I know I wanted to do this.
I know, but I've been sinning for a while. That's why I walked up to the front of that stage. I want to see Jesus again.
The Billy Graham Evangelistic Association said that over 380 churches and over 1,000 volunteers helped out with the outreach. One prayer counselor described the event as a revival. She added, quote, "I know there's not just a celebration here with us, but there's a celebration in heaven."
It's truly incredible, and it's something that Australia desperately needs because along with the rest of the West, they've seen an increase in these so-called religious nuns, something we've talked about here on FISM News about America, but that's being true across the West. So it's really exciting to see these revivals, as they're saying, outside of the United States.
Right, and especially in a prominent area. I mean, this is not a poor city or a poor place, and I think it's just encouraging to see even those who are well off, you know, looking for something more and finding that in Christ.
Yeah, it really is encouraging.
All right, well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for more updates until our next show, be sure to follow us on social media, or you can also download the FISM app as well. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.